Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today ESPN and Fox analysts clash over Josh Allen takes. What are we talking about? Well, ESPN, they released a top 10 NFL quarterbacks as of today list, and in this list, they provided anonymous quotes from NFL executives, basically telling us the good and bad parts about all of these quarterbacks. And there was one quote in this article from ESPN that basically fed the famished waters of sports talk debate in July for at least a week, if not just a few segments, where one executive called Josh Allen overrated. And what I'm about to show you guys is Dan Orlovsky. He went on Get Up, and he basically said that that NFL executive was an idiot and Josh Allen wasn't overrated. He gave us a few reasons why. But what made this conversation, what made this debate a little bit more interesting is that Nick Wright, on his Fox show later that day, brought up Dan Orlovsky, called Dan Orlovsky a liar for his Josh Allen take, and then he gave us his take about Josh Allen. And then after that, later that day, they sparred a little bit on Twitter about Josh Allen tucks. I don't know if you want to call it spar, but it was maybe a little bit of a scuffle. There wasn't any name calling or anything here. It was all pretty civil. It was about the football stuff, and it was about Josh Allen. But I will show you guys the Dan Orlovsky take, and then I'll come back, talk to you a little bit about that, and then we'll come back. I'll show you the Nick Wright take, and then after that, I will show you guys where both of them are wrong and where both of them are right. So here is Dan Orlovsky on Get Up talking about Josh Allen being not overrated.
This was one of the quotes that Jeremy collected from an NFL executive. He said of Josh Allen, quote, one of the more overrated players in the NFL. Immense talent, but he makes a lot of mistakes. He's underdeveloped at winning at the line of scrimmage, tends to lock onto targets, more of a thrower than precision passer, forces throws into traffic. And can I be honest with you? Dan Orlovsky, when I read that, the first thing I thought of was, please let Dan be on my show this week so I can read him that quote and let him respond. What do you think?
He's an idiot. That source, respectfully, I don't mean to be like that. That's moronic to say. First of all, Greeny, in the last 4 seasons, the only quarterback that has a better plus-minus turnover to touchdown ratio is Patrick Mahomes. The only guy. So he's the only guy that you would definitively, without question, take over Josh Allen. They've lost to Kansas City 3 times in the playoffs. I mean, Josh Allen is 2 or 3 plays away from being a multi-Super Bowl appearing quarterback and potentially Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's lost to Kansas City in the playoffs by freak defense and lost to Kansas City in the playoffs by missed field goal. It's a moronic statement to make, and for some reason, I don't know what the reason is, Josh Allen has become the cover boy for who could be the biggest hater and say the dumbest stuff.
Okay, so the biggest part of that clip that I just showed you there from Get Up that Nick Wright took issue with was the fact that Dan Orlovsky said that Josh Allen was 2 or 3 plays away from playing in multiple Super Bowls, which really isn't true. He did lose a few games, like kind of at the last minute if you go through his career, but that is the thing that really triggered Nick Wright and made him decide to go off on Dan Orlovsky and all of the Josh Allen lovers out there on his show, First Things First. So we'll go ahead, we'll play this clip from First Things First, and then we'll come back and discuss everything. Okay, guys, so full transparency, I had never posted a video from Fox onto this channel before, but apparently if you do that, it is copyrighted. So I can't actually post the original clip that like Nick Wright posted, like the video version of the show, but I should be able to post this audio version of the clip. So if you want to kind of maybe follow along a little better because you can't actually see the video of him, I would suggest putting on some subtitles. But here you go. This is the same clip I was going to show you, just the audio version of it.
You know, sometimes like clips from shows like ours play on the websites where they have the stats, like auto plays or whatever. And I saw my pal Dan Orlovsky call this guy an idiot.
Yes.
And it said, guy's an idiot. And then Dan went on to make things up. But what he said has just become like canon of the Josh Allen story, but they're lies.
Oh.
I heard he's 2 or 3 plays away from being in multiple Super Bowls. What are the plays? Tell me the 2 or 3 plays that put Josh Allen in a Super Bowl. Because I go through the career First year in the playoffs, you lost in round 1. So do we all agree you weren't 2 or 3 plays away that year? Okay, so that's not it. Your next year in the playoffs, you were in the AFC title game, down by 3 scores in the fourth quarter and lost by 14. So do we agree you weren't 2 or 3 plays away that year? The next year is the famous 13 seconds game, which happened in round 2. So if 2 or 3 plays go differently that game, then you are 2 or 3 and at home against Cincinnati, who you would never lose a home game to Cincinnati, except the next year in round 2, you lost a home game to Cincinnati. The next thing I heard Dan and others say is, last year, he's a missed field goal away from being in the Super Bowl. No, you were a missed field goal away from tying up a game in round 2. That if you had then won, you would have gotten the opportunity to go to Baltimore. So, son, just be okay with the honesty, which is physically A+, arm talent A+, career accomplishment B, performance in the biggest games of his career up and down. That's what he's been.
In fairness to Nick Wright, we did cut that clip a little bit short, but basically he goes on for another minute talking about Josh Allen's passer rating and his turnover rate. So this kind of scuffle between these two guys did continue on Twitter. I'll show you guys that exchange right now. So Nick Wright posted that video that we just showed you, and then Dan Orlovsky responds to that. You're a good man, brother. Calling him the most overrated guy in the league is idiotic. You can talk turnovers all you want, but the only guy who has a better TD turnover ratio since 19 is Patrick, and Allen is plus 94. Not Patrick, not perfect, but he's a stud. Nick Wright responds to that. The details here matter. The guy you called an idiot didn't say he was the most overrated guy in the league. He said he was one of the most overrated players. Those are very different. Just like it's very different to have been 2 or 3 plays away from winning a division round game in 2021 and 2 or 3 plays away from being in multiple Super Bowls. If you can show me the 2 or 3 plays that we can change that put Josh Allen in one, let alone multiple Super Bowls, I'd love to see them. Dan Orlovsky responds, morning, honest question, honest answer, take the money away. How many teams aren't switching their QB with Buffalo right now if they could? Okay, before I get into the Josh Allen kind of overrated or not debate, I did want to kind of talk about these two guys and talk about kind of the scope on how they view their take games. Now, I'm not exactly glued into 100% of the things that these guys say. I actually kind of like both these guys to a degree. I obviously don't agree with them on everything, but I do like them. I think I've watched enough of them where I kind of know how they kind of lay out their takes. So let's start off with Orlovsky. So he is the kind of guy, he's a former quarterback, as you guys probably know. But when he talks about quarterbacks, I swear it's at least 90 to 99% of the time, if he's talking about a quarterback, he is being overwhelmingly positive. Even if you're asking to talk about, even if you're doing a thing where you're comparing them, he's being overwhelmingly positive. Now, it could just be because he is just like an overwhelming positive guy, but it's probably more this dude was a former quarterback in the NFL and maybe not the best quarterback in the NFL. And he doesn't want to, be so aggressively, trashing like CJ Stroud or something in week 6. And then everyone can obviously just like dunk on him and just be like, hey, you were a crappy NFL quarterback, so who are you to say anything? So I think that is the perspective of where Dan comes, where he is always going to protect the quarterback, defend the quarterbacks as much as he possibly can. Now, Nick's take on this, and this is where he comes from. He is a Kansas City Chiefs fan. He is a Patrick Mahomes loyalist, and he is a Patrick Mahomes staunch defender. And I don't know why he's a defender, because there's not much to defend, because Patrick Mahomes has had like almost like a perfect career so far in the NFL, but he is a super big time Chiefs person. And because of that, he's kind of like over the years kind of developed this like take that has just been growing and escalating, that like, if I'm being nice about his take here, it is like, hey, Josh Allen isn't as good as all of you guys out there think he is. So I think that is where Nick comes to this take. Now, with all that being said, here's my take on this thing. Josh Allen is not an overrated quarterback. If you're talking about him being the best quarterback in the NFL, and if you're viewing it through that lens, yes, he would be overrated, because when you were doing your discussions on who is the best quarterback in the NFL right now, you start with Patrick Mahomes and then you work down from there. In defense of Nick Wright, I don't know where he would rank Josh Allen in his ranking system, but in my opinion, I don't think there is any way that Josh Allen falls down behind 3. If you look at him over the last few seasons, we talked about this last week. basically when he got Stephon Diggs in 2020, the last 4 seasons for Josh Allen, because before that, he was kind of like a little bit of a clunkier quarterback. You saw the talent in his arm, you saw the talent in his athleticism, but he really hadn't put it all together yet. But when he finally got Stephon Diggs, a number 1 top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, he became a perennial top 5 quarterback in the NFL. In that clip that we cut off of Nick Wright there talking about Josh Allen, he brings up passer rating. Guys, do you know how outdated of a stat you have if you're bringing up passer rating? And you know how bad of an argument that is? Guys, we have a more comprehensive stat to talk about quarterbacks and how to rank quarterbacks, and that is QBR. And if you look at QBR, Josh Allen is perennially ranked in the top 5 of that. If you look at passer rating, which is what Nick Wright brought up, 2 of the last 4 years, Josh Allen hasn't even ranked in the top 10. If you're having a comprehensive quarterback stat that you're trying to use to bash Josh Allen, and in that stat does not have Josh Allen in the top 10 in all 4 of those years, then it's probably a flawed quarterback stat. Again, I'm not saying QBR is the Bible and then you should use that to base off all of your quarterback rankings, but I do think that is a more comprehensive stat to talk about quarterback rankings. The criticism that people have been bringing up over Josh Allen over the last few days, the turnovers. Let's talk about the turnovers here a little bit. One, I watch football every single weekend. There's never really been a time that I've watched Josh Allen. It's oh, Josh Allen's having this really bad turnover day. Maybe there's been a few, but again, everyone has bad days in the NFL. Everyone has, days where they're a little bit off, and Josh Allen is no different. The dude's still just if he's just on your team and he's your quarterback, and this is how the Bills have built their team over the last few seasons. It's the Josh Allen show. We need Josh Allen to do everything. We need Josh Allen to throw for 4,000 plus passing yards. We need him to score all of our touchdowns. We need him to be our second running back. Guys, until this previous year, Josh Allen had not had a 1,000-yard rusher in the backfield. If you take out Josh Allen's rushing stats with the Buffalo Bills, instead of a lot of years they're around the top 10, they fall to drastically fall to a bottom third. So the fact that the Bills have kind of built their team where it's this Josh Allen passing show where he throws a high volume of passes, yeah, you're going to have a lot more turnovers because he's throwing the ball and he's having to decipher defenses a lot more, versus a lot of other quarterbacks around the league have the luxury of handing off to the running back a lot more. And if anything, you could say that the construction, if you're talking about Josh Allen and maybe his postseason failures to this point in his career, now he is a 500 postseason quarterback, by the way, but maybe part of the reason that they have struggled against the Bengals is just because the Bills have been a terrible matchup for the Bengals, because the Bengals have been able to basically bully them on both lines of scrimmage. And the Bills couldn't run the ball that much, but against the Bengals, they couldn't even run the ball at all. So it was just a very bad matchup there. And I think what Dan Orlovsky was saying in that very first clip was he was hey, if a few plays go differently in a few of these playoff games, he misspoke and said the Super Bowl, but a few plays do go differently in some of these playoff games. It is a little bit of a different story with Josh Allen. Again, a lot of other things, as Nick Wright pointed out, have to go right for him to go all the way to a Super Bowl. But again, if you're watching all of these playoff games, other than maybe one of those Cincinnati games, you're not watching these playoff games and going Josh Allen, they're losing because of him, because he's not showing up. Maybe you can point out one or two, but I think the overwhelming majority of the time the Bills have bounced in the playoffs, they're losing to a better team, or it's just a bad matchup that we're talking about with Cincinnati. Now, the difference between him and somebody like Patrick Mahomes is how we're talking about hey, if something's not working with the Bills, it's kind of on offense, it's kind of oh God, what do we do now? When that happens with the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and that Chiefs, machine that they are, most of the time throughout Patrick Mahomes' career, they've been able to figure it out. A lot of the Super Bowls that they were in and they won wasn't necessarily working out that much. Things weren't working out throughout that entire game. That was the same thing that made Brady and Belichick great. A lot of those Super Bowls, including the Atlanta one, the first half was pretty ugly. So that is the thing that Josh Allen, if he can figure that out, where it's hey, maybe in some of these games, things might not be going our way, and I can figure out other ways, and maybe the fact that they are going to be turning into more of a rushing team, because I think James Cook is going to have another big year for the Bengals, and the fact that they've kind of restructured their offense. They have They got rid of Stephon Diggs. It's been kind of notable that the Bills basically have an entire new receiving core, and it looks like they're trying to be, we were talking about that they kind of got bullied around by Cincinnati. I think they're going to be a team that uses a lot more, tight end formations where they have multiple tight ends out on the field at once. And I think they're going to be running the ball a lot more. And we'll see if they take a little bit of that pressure off of Josh Allen and they say, hey, we don't need you to be our entire offense. Maybe he does turn down those turnovers a little bit. Maybe his offense is a little bit more balanced. And in a playoff setting, that is a lot harder to defend. And maybe the Buffalo Bills can actually go on more of a run this season in 2024 than they have previously. But I definitely don't think Josh Allen's overrated. I don't think there's that many quarterbacks that you would take over him in the NFL. And if there is, there's maybe 2 or 3. Maybe you take Joe Burrow. Maybe you take Lamar Jackson, the 2-time MVP. But other than that, I'm not sure who you're taking. But there you have it, guys. That's going to do it for this video here today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. That is the best way for me to get feedback on this show, and that is the best way to help this channel grow and help other people see this video. If you like this video and this is your first time watching it, feel free to check out the rest of the Sports Detective Podcast channel page. You might find some other videos that you like. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. And please let me know in the comments if you think Josh Allen is overrated or not, and where you'd rank him in the list of the quarterback rankings in the NFL. I have him probably 2 or 3. Again, thank you very much for watching. Love you guys. Talk to you next time.